I found an article that really synthesizes some of the ideas that we're studying for the final. So I thought I'd do a little presentation on it. Optimizing stress responses with reappraisal and mindset interventions. This is an integrated model. And we met Jeremy Jamieson when reviewing his article, Improving Acute Stress Responses, the Power of Reappraisal. Jamieson is a professor of psychology at Northeastern University. Now, this review that I'm going to be reviewing today was conducted in 2018. So that's 5 years after the study that we're reading for the class. And it integrates two key constructs, self-regulation and self-regulation research, reappraisal, and mindset theory. So if you remember from Gail's amazing presentation that there are two states that Jamieson and his colleagues describe. The challenge state, when basically the situation is your appraisals of personal resources exceed situational demands. You're able to calm down, your heart starts to beat more efficiently, and there's you're able to be more approach motivated, and as opposed to the threat state, when the perceived demand exceeds resources, your heart starts to race, and there's all of these physiological reactions to a situation. And thank you, Gail, for the great review of this article. The hypothesis in the article was that reappraisal can positively affect physiology, attention, and performance. And the conclusion of the article is that reappraising arousal as a coping tool during acutely stressful episodes that require instrumental responses can promote adaptive physiological responses, reduce attention bias, and improve performance. That reappraising a stressful situation can actually, within the stress, can actually bring about positive things and improve performance. I like to tell the story of when my daughter was going on stage to perform the lead in the Nutcracker, and she was standing behind the wings. She's a ballet dancer, and I went up to her and I said, "Are you nervous?" Because I was nervous. I was kind of in a bit of a threat stage, and she said, "No, I'm excited." So she was kind of just in that challenge stage. So this article brings together the reappraisal process with mindset theory. And if you remember, with growth mindset has been shown to facilitate challenge-seeking and academic performance. And we looked at academic mindsets, the two types of academic mindsets: growth mindset, the belief that intelligence can be developed over time, and the belonging mindset, the belief that people like you belong in your educational environment. And like we've seen in studies by Yeager and Rattan and with Dweck's theory, that those types of mindsets can actually improve academic performance. So let's think about what Jamieson is bringing in here is actually the idea of a stress mindset. That's how one is perceiving the experience of stress. So there's two mindsets here. One is stress is an enhancing mindset. Stress is enhancing, that stress as it has enhancing effects on performance, health, and well-being, very much like Jamieson talked about around the reappraisal. Or stress is debilitating mindset, that stress has a debilitating effect on performance, health, and well-being. So what they're doing here is they've reviewed in this article. There's not a study; it's just a review of the literature around this and proposing this idea of combining the two: the stress, appraisal, and mindset. Okay, and it can improve physiological responding, performance, affect the responses, and better health outcomes. So a couple of the studies that they cited was with finance employees who attended a 2-hour stress mindset training reported improvements in health and well-being 3 to 4 weeks after the intervention. And there was a field experiment among college students suggesting that the stress is enhancing mindset intervention delivered to a summer program of college students predicted high levels of reported positive affect during spring semester exams over the freshman and sophomore years. So these kind of sound familiar around some of the articles that we've read about studies with a mindset intervention like Jaeger and Rattan about mindset helping with grades and performance. So like Rattan and Jaeger, but this was done later. The Jaeger study that we're looking at was actually done after this article was written. So Jaeger et al. In 2019, national experiment reveals where a growth mindset improves achievement. That came after the article I'm reviewing. Rattan was before it in 2016, leveraging mindsets to promote academic achievement, and they made the policy recommendations. So we'd imagine that all of this literature together would make a strong case. So what happens when you combine reappraisal with a growth mindset in stressful situations? So here's the idea: optimizing stress responses with reappraisal and mindset interventions. This review explains how the reappraising arousal improves cardiovascular and cognitive responses to stress, like we talked about. Rethinking stress, the role of mindsets in determining the stress response. This all can be used as regulatory tools to optimize stress responses, facilitate performance, and promote active coping. In the review, they examine the idea that the processes associated with stress are multifaceted, and they look at what they call the BPS model, which is the biopsychosocial model that it takes in biology, psychology, and sociology. It's biological, psychological, and social. It's a model of challenge of threat and implicit theories of stress. Response to stress can result, the article proposes that the response to stress can result in either adaptive or maladaptive outcomes, depending on so many factors, including the context and what they're calling here upstream psychological factors like reappraisals and mindsets. They reviewed 2 interventions that look at stress reappraisal and stress mindset, and that invited individuals to perceive stress responses as functional and adaptive, and seek the opportunity inherent in stress. Like I said before, they considered biological, psychological, and social, the BPS. So this novel integration of reappraisal and mindset models to maximize the utility and effectiveness of stress optimization, making the most out of stress. So they they put together stress optimization in this model here. This is sort of a theory of change that they used. So the 2 elements you see over on the left, stress is enhancing, that's the mindset elements, and then stress reappraisal elements will bring about mechanisms, cognitive, psychological, physiological, and then the outcomes are cognitive, psychological, and behavioral. So we would see improvements in academic performance and improvements in a lower frequency of illness, lowering the negative active coping behaviors, and improved sense of purpose, well-being, and lowering negative emotions. The cognitive performance would go up and persistence would go up. So they're showing how all this ties together. So integrating stress reappraisal and the stress is enhancing mindset interventions, they warn that it should not be considered some special or unique hub for all integrations of psychological interventions for optimizing stress responses. It's like a little caveat there, like this isn't the all or nothing, this is part of the picture. This review synthesized these 2 approaches that share the same underlying spirit. And this is important, that stress is not inherently negative. for performance, health, and well-being, but that it can be utilized as a resource for goal achievement. So the future directions for this review is limited in that it applies reappraisal and mindset to interventions primarily with acute stress situations. I was thinking about this around chronic long-term stress and the idea of the allostatic load that chronic stress brings. So would people be like less able in a chronic stress situation to reappraise, change their mindset, or really develop that mindset? That can be, that's for future, some future studies. Other future direction, this study will allow us, we can learn how stress responses unfold over time and between people and how they impact outcomes in the domains of education, organizations, and clinical science. And some of this has been started by Yeager and colleagues, and they did this in 2019 in the article we read for class, recommending mindset training for adolescents to improve education outcomes. So we have to think about, okay, what would Moreau, McNamara, and Bergoni have to say, and other critics that criticize or just look skeptically and test the malleability of theories of mindsets. So they would advocate, I would imagine, for replication, because they contend that the idea of mindsets hasn't been empirically replicated. So that needs to be worked on. And then Ford and Troy point out two fundamental drawbacks of reappraisal. Remember, they talked about how people are often unable to use reappraisal successfully, and even when successful, they don't always use it. Using it isn't always functional. So these things need to be taken into account as we blend together these two theories. I always like to go to what would Viktor Frankl say, and there's a little bit of conflict here. I'll share it with you. So here's a great quote that puts this into perspective for us. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance, to choose one's own way. And I really think that that's what Jamieson and colleagues and the proponents of mindset theory, the proponents of grit, the proponent like Erickson of deliberate practice, the ability of the individual to respond. In a stressful situation, your choice and your response to it, they're offering this choice that Frankl, I think, is describing here. But Frankl also said, this is another quote that caused me to kind of scratch my head and think about, that an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. So when we think about that in terms of maybe overusing reappraisal, like Ford and Troy talked about, overusing reappraisal in situations that are abnormal, maybe an abnormal reaction is the normal course. Thank you.